Welcome, Bulldog fans, to another Mississippi State Monday Joe Moorhead press conference. Steve, we're coming out of what the coach had to say following Mississippi State's victory over Kentucky, first SEC win of the season, and now they go to face a different breed of cats in Auburn this weekend, 6:05 kickoff against Auburn on the Plains. Your takeaways from today's press conference?
I think the first thing is that Tommy Stevens' injury was different from the week before.
Not very well defined, was it? Both upper body, and I know that we all assume the shoulder's been an issue, but this is kind of a little bit of twist there.
Yeah, he said it was a different ailment than the 2 weeks prior, and so it's one of those things too. He says that he's going to be back on the practice field on Tuesday, which makes you think that it's not necessarily a long-lasting situation. But it is interesting too, when State signed Tommy Stevens, the knock on him has always been that he was a little bit injury prone. And now that he's been here, this is the second injury that we've had. And so it makes you appreciate the fact that you've got Keaton Thompson and Garrett Schrader now, who is now one game away from exhausting his 4 games of college eligibility and preserving his red shirt. But that was the one thing today that was a little bit of a surprise.
I don't think there's any question now that Garrett Schrader will not be redshirting this season. Whether healthy or not, the kid's just been too good in the games we've seen, particularly leading the Bulldogs to that victory over Kentucky. But back to Stevens, I thought it was interesting. Yes, you start dissecting every word said, but he said that Nick Gibson and Stephen Guidry will be practicing on Tuesday. Then he said Tommy Stevens also will be practicing Tuesday in some capacity, which kind of indicates, and we're guessing obviously, but you're still trying to protect him at this point, leaving open the question of, do you even play him against Auburn if you have any question at all about his health with an open date following that game?
Yeah, and that was one of the questions kind of posed today, and Joe admitted that was a good question, and it's just really going to depend on how Tommy responds here in the next few days. But the good thing is Mississippi State has a talented understudy right now that is kind of the hottest thing going, the SEC Freshman of the Week this week, and was outstanding last weekend. And really, you take away 2 freshman mistakes, and I'm sure Joe could probably point out more than that, but you look at the interception to a wide-open Osiris Mitchell, probably got a little bit excited there after putting together a solid drive, and that could have been a drive to put Kentucky away in the first half. Then you come back out in the first drive of the second half, similar situation, a chance to put it away. You take the sack, and there's a fumble there, and Kentucky gets on it and kind of kept them in the ball game. But outside of that, I don't know where you could really draw any criticisms of Garrett Schrader and how great it is for Mississippi State to have him here as a luxury while Tommy Stevens is on the mend.
And Coach Moore had clarified one of the plays when Mississippi State ran that little route with Lee Witherspoon, and it looked like too much air was put into the ball. As it turned out, he said that Witherspoon, being a true freshman, didn't run the route exactly correctly on that play, and that Garrett Schrader seemed to adjust a little bit to him, and it just didn't turn out. Now, Witherspoon was hurt on the play, did not come back in the game, but we're told he will also resume practicing again on Tuesday as well. Let's see, the other guys who should be back, Tyler Woodland should be back. Oh, he threw in very late in the day. He mentioned that Keaton Thompson is not yet 100%. He is practicing. I thought, again, that's another telling statement because – obviously Keaton is in that situation of preserving a redshirt year, has 4 games available. But if he's not practicing full speed right now, and now Stevens is questionable, how careful do you have to be with Garrett Schrader and still take a chance to win this game?
Yeah, that's a great question, and especially with an open date right behind him. And Joe has said before he hadn't changed his offensive identity no matter who's been at quarterback. Now, I think he was a little more controlled in the passing game this weekend. A lot of passes to Farrad Green underneath, some backside of the backfield, kind of simplified things for Garrett until he got into the flow. But I do think maybe you are a little more measured in your quarterback run calls, especially against a defense as talented as Auburn's.
Well, when you have a running back like Kylan Hill, you can be disciplined in your run calls by just say, keep feeding Kylan Hill. Now, he did say today, ideally, he wants him 20, 30 carries a game from that position with 10 quarterback runs, whether called or scrambled. Kylan Hill leading the SEC in rushing. I think he's still leading the FBS in 100-yard games with 4 already. In fact, he's facing his counterpart, Whitlow from Auburn, who's the SEC's number 2 rusher. When you have a guy like Kylan Hill having the season you have, it makes it easier, especially on a freshman quarterback, but any quarterback.
It's true, David. And one of the things with Kylan, too, is he is so skilled at everything. It's like he is a very well-rounded back. You can use him as a receiver out of the backfield. And he's gotten much better on his pass protection pickups. We saw that this weekend, probably his best game as a Bulldog in pass pro. And so you're not necessarily tipping your hand. But with Mississippi State's depth chart being somewhat of a mash unit, in recent weeks, Kylan Hill has taken the lion's share of the carries, but Nick Gibson we're told he'll be back, but this time last week we were expecting him to be back for Kentucky. He wasn't, and then you have another running back go down, which makes Malik Dear's availability that much more of a luxury. And Bulldog fans have kind of been clamoring for that for a while, but Dear himself has been reluctant to make the position change in an effort to get on the field. Now I think he's open to whatever, and he was quite the weapon on Saturday.
Now, you mentioned possibly simplifying the passing game. That said, we asked Coach Moorhead about Schrader's ability in that game particularly on busted plays, scramble plays, how efficient State was in those situations, even more productive passing, I think, than the called plays. And that's partly due to the receivers having a better understanding of scramble drill principles, whether it's vertical on the field, sides of the field, but also Schrader's just pure ability to pick up the right guy at the right time.
Yeah, and David, I tell you, watching those receivers work back to the quarterback when things do break down, because he is so elusive, that was, I thought, a difference in the ball game too. You saw Javonte Payton do it. You saw Isaiah Zuber do it. And Malik Dear, I thought, on that 20-yard reception he had, I mean, it was just one of those situations where I felt like the Bulldogs were all on the same page, and they benefited from the fact that Garrett Schrader had the ability to be somewhat elusive back there and extend plays.
Of course, we mentioned Kylan Hill with his 400-yard rushing game so far. Now he's facing a great rushing defense this week, but State's offensive line is back to full strength. The presence of Deron Parker, I think he missed a couple of series in there, and it showed because Michael Story, out of anxiety and nerves, got a couple of penalties, but still we know the kid's a reliable reliever. It allows you to leave James Jackson on the defensive line side, because a question that did not come up today, because we just kind of learned to quit asking, is will you be playing Lee Autry or Willie Gay in those games? At this point, Lee Autry, as we understand it, would have 2 games left, and Gay now 3 games. This Auburn offense has really surprised a lot of people. The 28 points they put up on A&M over the weekend. Now, the Aggies are not a great defense by any stretch, but still, now you've got a real challenge out there. And by the way, you're facing a quarterback who Joe Moorhead also recruited.
And Bo Nix is going to be a star in this league. I mean, he is going to come into his own, but you're already beginning to see some flashes with him. You saw the touchdown pass to beat Oregon, and then this past weekend, he is one of those guys that it seems like the bigger the stage, the bigger he performs. And Joe said he's a little bit better as a runner than the quarterbacks they've had previously at Auburn in recent years. And so, I expect Nix to be a big-time player in this league. I'm kind of glad to get him early. Not happy to get him on the Plains. It's a very, very difficult place to play. Even though Mississippi State won over there in 2015, but David, you and I were there in 2017. It was an absolute nightmare for Mississippi State, and that was a Bulldog team that felt pretty good about themselves and went over there and got absolutely crushed. So we've taken some really good teams to Auburn and come home with a loss. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out this weekend.
Setting aside the questions about Gay and Autry, which will not be answered until game time sometime on Saturday. Defensively, there's one topic that is riding over everything. Win or lose, State is not tackling like the defenses of the past. And they knew this would not be one of those defenses on that level. But still, yes, Joe Moore had said, sometimes you just credit the ball carrier or the receiver for doing a good job. At the same time, he said, tackling has got to improve.
Yeah, it's true, David. And in-game, in-season tackling, you're not going to practice that to the ground. You don't want to run the risk of injury. But some big possession plays against Kentucky where State encountered and engaged with the Kentucky ball carrier short of the sticks, and he was able to move forward. The 4th and 10 play, our 4th and 15 play is one particular where Brian Cole has him well short of the stick, and Lynn Bowden fights through and gets the first down and extends the drive, and Kentucky ends up scoring there. And sometimes games are won and lost on one play, and that seemed to be a big play in the ballgame at the time. They've got to get better. I thought as a team they tackled better, but when they did miss, they were huge misses.
And since last week, we spent a lot of time talking about problems in the special teams. We give credit where due. State kickoffs were well covered this week. Only one little issue on a punt return, but still nothing came of that. And Tucker Day averaged 64 yards. Yes, you'd have liked to have knock a couple of yards off that average because 2 of those punts could have easily been down on the 1-yard line. It's very close. Still a great average. And I thought Moorhead had an interesting comment about Tucker Day and how he responded when State brought in a graduate transfer who, as it turned out, did not get eligible, but stuck with the program, and now he's reaping the benefits.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's one of the things last year, down the stretch, I thought Tucker Day kind of figured it out late, but punting had been a bit of an adventure most of the year last year, but he has proven to be a real weapon this year, and it's good to see.
So that's our takeaways from today's Monday with Moorhead. Mississippi State will be practicing offense tomorrow, defense Tuesday. That's our press conference schedule. And also we get Coach Marcus Johnson on Wednesday, even though it's a defensive day. And he certainly will have a lot to talk about after all the shuffling he's had to do in his front so far this season. But they've got the line back healthy. Bulldogs trying to get some guys healthy. We still will be watching during the course of the week about guys like Marcus Murphy and others. But at this point, you're not going to say you're full strength, but at least you have the bodies available going to Auburn. So we'll be talking later in the week. Steve and I will do our typical pregame, and then we'll be speaking to you from the Plains and Auburn this Saturday. So now for our James Page 24/7 staff from the Steel Complex on the Mississippi State University campus, this is David Murray.